sort of came on board, our kids were all quite young, and we didn't really have much of a. We'd gone through sort of a stage where we didn't really have much of a children's church or program for kids. So I really was basically starting from scratch, and so I thought, well, where do I even start? So obviously I prayed about it, and I thought, well, I'll just get some resources and read a few books and just sort of, see where we're going to go with all of this. So I've written a couple of books down that were quite influential in the way that we do it. So the first one was what's called Postmodern Children's Ministry by Ivy Beckwith, and I think I just bought this from here. I've just pulled a few things out which sort of shaped my thinking a bit. So just, I guess, trying to understand how the children of today learn differently and think differently than my generation and the generations before. Just trying to get my head around the whole postmodern kids and how they work. And she says that postmodern children are experience-oriented, which you probably all know already. They want to use all their senses as they learn and want their learning environments to provide experiences, not just facts and formulas. They want to do in order to learn. They want to experience God, not just learn about God. They want mystery and mysticism, and they don't just want to be entertained. So later, hopefully, you might be able to see from what we do, I'm trying to sort of build on that. And also, these 5 processes for guiding the spiritual development of children are also have been quite influential in how I've come up with our program. So the idea that children need to be involved in processes that communicate belonging. So that's important, not just for children's leaders, but for all the members of the community. The children need to participate in all the rituals of the faith community, experiencing the stories of faith, not just hearing them. The importance of modelling of adult lives in front of the kids. That children need their learning to be interactive and life-based. And that kids need help and encouragement in the exercise of choice-making. And that spiritually forming children means we help them see that in the economy of the kingdom of God, being successful is loving others, showing mercy, fighting for justice, and walking humbly with God. And I think she comes up with that just because in the world today, that's not what the world tells us success is. And the kids are constantly hearing these messages about what they should be like and what it means to, to succeed in the world, and about, status and prestige and money and the way you look and all of that sort of stuff. And so I guess it's countercultural what we're trying to teach the kids, that no, actually, in God's kingdom, this is what success is, and it's not about, all these outer things. Another book that I read, which is quite influential, was called Transforming Children into Spiritual Champions by George Barna. And if you know anything about him, he's basically a researcher, and so that's a whole lot of statistical facts. I mean, it's American, but it translates pretty well into our culture too. And so that's, as you'll see later, that's sort of where I got some of my ideas about the different areas for spiritual formation of the kids. And the little promo that I mentioned before that's on the website, it talks about kids being disciples in training, not disciples in waiting. And that's another one of the things that I'm quite strong about, is that the kids, they can be involved now as children, not just waiting till they're adults or something like that. So that's sort of the background. Our aim is that we want to see our kids become increasingly active, complete and passionate followers of Christ. So we want to work with the parents. Obviously it's not just up to us, especially on the Sundays that the families are involved, to provide the solid biblical foundation, well-rounded spiritual formation and a planned transition from child to adolescent. So I guess that's another area that we identified, is that the transition from kids' church to youth you can lose kids, especially on a Sunday, because if you don't, at the moment we don't have anything for youth on a Sunday morning, apart from just being part of the adult service. So we don't actually have any kids in that age group, so it's not an issue. But yeah, part of our thing is that we gradually help the kids to be able to engage in a full service. Okay, so worship. We have everyone in together for the first 20 minutes of the service on Sundays. And we strategically try to make this a time where the kids can worship too. So we have visual stuff. We keep prayers short, things sort of simple, so that the adults can still worship too, but also the kids. So sometimes there will be specific kids stuff, but not always. But we always try to make it so that the kids can actually engage and they're not just waiting to go out. And sometimes that works better than others, but that's the aim. They also participate in communion, so if we have communion, they'll come either have it at the beginning or we'll come back in for that. And obviously things like baptisms, dedications, the kids participate in that. So as far as teaching goes, we have 5 sort of groups. We have Go Gaga, which is our 0 to 2-year-olds.
I love the names.
So they have a very basic curriculum, but they still do have a curriculum of stories and songs that they have. And then we have our Go Fishers, our 3 and 4-year-olds, and we have a sort of a set curriculum for that, which is like a rolls over. It's a 2-year curriculum, which is basically introducing them to God and the Bible. Then we have Go Bananas, which is our 5 and 6-year-olds, which is sort of a bit, so the teaching's a little bit more complicated, and that one's like a compilation of God's promises, kingship and salvation. And then we have Go Getters, which is our 7 to 9-year-olds, and for that group we sort of tailor, like I write the curriculum in line with what the adults are learning. So at the moment the adults are doing a series on spiritual disciplines, so I've written, like, for the kids, appropriate for their age group. Like, it's not exactly the same, but I've done ones on sort of listening to God, talking to God. We had a special prayer thing, living God's way, so those sorts of things. And they have, obviously, they sort of have interactivity. But in that group we try to they're getting to the age where they can actually read the Bible together and discuss it and try to learn some of those group skills. So that's what we're trying to aim for in that group. So then after that group, we have Go Figure, which is our 10 to 12-year-olds. And so they actually stay in with the adults for their teaching time. And their teaching time, or the way we break up the structure of the term, is that we have, in the school holidays, we'll have 2-week break, and the kids will just do fun stuff. So we get other people from the congregation to come and just play games with the kids and just get to know them, and the kids just have fun together. And they're sort of all in together, so all ages, apart from the really little ones, they all are part of that. And then, in January, because it's such a long break, we use one of the Scripture Union holiday programs, and you often sort of might get visitors as well, so they can sort of plug into that pretty easily. Ministry weeks, so the Go Figure age children, because they're sometimes, depending on how the term breaks down, they're sometimes in the service maybe for 4 weeks in a row. So what I've introduced this term is that for one of those weeks, they have a ministry week. So I've given them like a few areas where they can choose to help out in. So it's usually the younger classes, or they can do help on the sound desk, or help with the singing, praise leading, welcoming, that sort of stuff. So they choose one of those areas, and that week they sort of do some training and helping in that area. So that's worked quite well, and they've got into that. And then, the main thing that I think Andrew wanted me to talk to you about was the projects that we do. And this sort of is coming from what I was talking about earlier, the styles of learning and actually doing stuff. This is only for the 3 older classes. So they, each term, they'll participate in a project, and So we have, throughout the year, we have worship, mission, community and service. So this term in the project they're doing is they're going to actually run the Easter Sunday service. And we're going to make that really accessible for families and invite sort of the Spark families, local families from the local area. So yeah, at the moment we've just been planning how they're going to do that. So they're probably going to do, they'll do an item and a skit sort of thing. Kids can do Bible readings, pretty much everything except the sermon kids will do. So that will be coming up soon. So yeah, in the past, this must be the 5th year we've done it. So the first year we sort of just started off, they made a big display for the chapel for the Easter service. The second year they led a whole normal Sunday service. And the third year they ran a gathering. So I'm not sure if I can just talk to you a bit about the network that our church is sort of involved with. But we had, it's a little bit looser these days, but in those days it was, so our congregation, and we've got a Korean congregation, War Vets Church, we've got Soul Food, which is a cafe church, and is that all? Yeah. And there's a couple of other sort of smaller communities that we're sort of linked in with. So we used to have these gatherings every sort of 6 weeks or so, where we all get together, and it's a bit different to a normal service. It's sort of sharing, and but anyway, the kids sort of ran one of those when we had our camp. And they've also led a service at the War Vets Home, which is a senior citizens home in Murderbank. And then the mission projects that we have, the kids have, the first one they did was on local outreach. So we sort of learn about the project, why we're doing it, what it is. And like local outreach one, we did some prayer walking, we made some prayer calendars, talked about local outreach and stuff like that. Went over to the school and prayed and stuff like that. Overseas mission, we've got, our church sort of has 3 main sort of overseas missionaries that we support. So we did you've done one of those journey interactive mission things. So I sort of adapted that for kids, and so we sort of, did the whole, had passports, and we went to these countries and learnt about it. And we have, I don't know if you know the Finlays in Uganda, set up a hospital there. They were sort of from connected quite strongly with our church, so actually they came in and did that one. And we support the Ames family in Japan, and yeah, so we did that one. So we sort of went to Japan, and then we also have a family, and we went to Bolivia. So sort of those were 3 weeks for that mission. Last year the kids raised money for Bibles in Lebanon. That was the Bible Society project for the year, so we sort of plugged into that. And this year we'll probably be doing some mission at the War Vets Home. So not necessarily going to be involved in the service, but for all the residents, so coming up with some sort of idea that might be appropriate for that. And community, because of our sort of network structure, the community projects have been sort of working with one of the other communities in the network, or just within our own. So within our own, the first year, the kids made morning teas for a month just for the community, and made a birthday cake for someone and that sort of stuff. Then they've also, with the War Vets Home, we had a community project with them, because they love the kids coming and just doing stuff there. Korean church, we did a project in conjunction with them, and they sort of taught the kids some Korean and some dances and prayers, and we participated in a gathering that they were leading. And then Soul Food is like a cafe sort of church. So yeah, we did that one last year, and we went over there and did a kids program on a Sunday just in the cafe, and the kids made some friendship bracelets to give to the kids over there, and yeah, so